All right, let's jump right into this explainer. Today, we're doing a complete cognitive teardown of Ed Catmull and Amy Wallace's foundational book, Creativity, Inc. Now, if you're thinking this is just some charming behind-the-scenes look at how Pixar makes great animated movies, yeah, I'm going to need you to reset your expectations right this second. At UpGoWise, our practice focuses on the hidden architectures of success. And this book, well, it actually starts with what I can only describe as a creative crime scene. We aren't talking about how to be a genius today. It's an operational problem. We're asking a deeply uncomfortable question. How do highly capable builders, people with incredible discipline, taste, and high standards, how do they accidentally design conditions where their own best work literally starves to death? So we're going to look at that protective shell we all build around our work, and we are going to completely dismantle an operating assumption you probably didn't even realize you were defending. So let's start right at the crime scene itself. Why do smart teams hide the bad truth? The habit is shockingly simple, and honestly, it is incredibly common. You get a new idea, right? A new strategy, a rough draft. But instead of sharing it, you wait. You wait until the work feels defensible. You hold off on exposing it to the room until you're absolutely sure it won't embarrass you. But here's the catch. By the time you finally ask for feedback, the work is already hardened. You've delayed the truth until it becomes an expensive structural failure. Look, a creative idea is weak at birth. It needs pressure, it needs air, and yes, it needs shelter. Too much shelter makes it soft, but too much pressure kills it early. The real tragedy here is that skilled builders routinely choose the shelter of silence. They push off that crucial stress test until the very end of the process. I want you to picture that unfinished draft you have sitting open on your laptop right now. Seriously, think about it. Right now, it feels like wet concrete. Every time you even imagine someone critiquing it, you picture them just pressing an ugly, permanent handprint right into the center of your work. Your nervous system literally perceives early feedback as a visceral threat. So what do? You keep the file closed, you bump the review meeting back another week, you tell yourself, I just have high standards. The work just needs more incubation, a little more craft, a bit more polish. But let's be fiercely honest with ourselves for a second. Your so-called high standards, they're acting as an invisible guard dog. Your taste might just be fear dressed up in formal clothes. You're actually using your professional reputation as a defense mechanism to avoid the messy, ego-bruising reality of early critique. Which brings us to Section 1, the trap of hidden judgment, and the loop of avoidance. You see, what you are hiding from the room actually starts managing the room. It's a trap. It operates as a perfectly sealed loop of avoidance. First, you delay exposure. Second, you try to improve the work entirely alone in this little echo chamber. And third, you confuse the comfortable silence of that isolation with actual quality. Judgment isn't always someone screaming at you from across a table. Sometimes it's that very quiet, reasonable adult voice in your own head saying, let's just not waste their time until this is perfect. This avoidance loop eventually solidifies into a specific belief. Read it with me. If the work is good enough, it can withstand scrutiny, so I should only show it when it is ready. I mean, I know that sounds incredibly mature, right? It sounds like the voice of a seasoned expert who totally respects their colleagues' time. And I validate that impulse, I really do. But here is the brutal reality. This belief is completely false. It's just risk laundering. Strong ideas do not emerge fully armored. They only grow scar tissue and structural integrity through contact. When you wait until the work is ready to show it, you are starving it of the oxygen of learning. You are guaranteeing that when the critique finally does come, the structure will be way too brittle to actually adapt. And this perfectly illustrates the hidden cost of the trap. You're faced with a fundamental dilemma. Pay early with ego or pay late with structure. You can either expose the rough, ugly, unfinished thing right now, today, and risk looking careless, taking a quick, direct hit to your pride, or you can wait. You can wait until you look competent, polished, and totally safe. But if you wait, you let a flawed structure quietly solidify. And when the inevitable stress test finally happens, and it will happen, it's not just going to bruise your ego. It's going to collapse the entire project. Both of these options involve pain, but one uses early pain as a vital signal for growth, while the other delays the pain until it becomes completely fatal. So how do we break this loop? Well, we have to move out of the psychology of defense and into the physics of architecture. Let's look at Section 2, the anchor of truth and revealing the load. Here is your new anchor image. Imagine a massive steel beam mid-fracture. I want you to really hold that image in your mind. The beam isn't sitting safely on a truck, protected from the world, but it also hasn't completely collapsed. It is under immense pressure. It's groaning, it's revealed, and it is load-bearing. This is the exact ideal creative state Ed Catmull protects at Pixar. It's an honest state. Think about it. When a builder sees a beam bending under a heavy load, they don't debate whether the steel has feelings. They don't sit around asking if the beam has potential. The visible stress tells the builder exactly where the structural support needs to go. We have to shift our definition of good work. We need to move away from it being perfectly polished and impenetrable and redefine it as being honestly load-bearing. It has to be capable of showing us exactly where it's weak. Now, what's truly counterintuitive here is that this principle doesn't just apply to your struggling projects. It applies most critically to your wins. Because success can be the ultimate camouflage. When you have a massive hit, the applause in the room can so easily drown out the weak signals. A strategy might sound clever on paper, but actually be completely inert. A design might look beautiful but have absolutely no pulse. When you win, people start performing certainty. The success becomes this shiny facade that hides a sick, decaying creative room. That is exactly why a true leader's job is to hunt for what success is hiding. You have to build sensors, things like rigorous postmortems, that force the room to stay honest, even when everyone is busy patting each other on the back. We know the goal is that honest state of the bending steel beam. But how do you actually build a room that can handle it? This brings us to Section 3, the architecture of candor and truth without ownership theft. At UpGo Wise, we always emphasize that candor is not just a mood. It's not a personality trait. Candor is relational architecture. It's a highly specific system designed to make truth safer and to bring it in earlier. Pixar calls this architecture the brain trust. It's basically temporary scaffolding meant to hold ugly truth without bringing in shame. So here are the mechanics. First, and absolutely foremost, you must separate candor from command. The people giving feedback can diagnose the work, but they absolutely cannot seize the steering wheel. That is the true genius of the design. I mean, we've all been in that terrible meeting where feedback turns into a hostile takeover, right? But here, truth enters the room without ownership theft. You name the problem, not the person. You offer pressure to test the structure, not possession to take it over. And finally, you give the original creator the dignity of making the repair themselves. This dignity is the exact mechanism that stops candor from devolving into control or compliance. So the really crucial point is this. Brutal honesty is actually lazy. It truly is. It's just dumping sheer, unrefined force into a room where surgical skill is what's actually required. Candor without cruelty isn't softness, it is precision. A brain trust is not a weapons room, where critics get to show off how smart they are by completely destroying an idea. It is a repair bay. It targets the effect of the work, naming that fracture in the steel, without ever weaponizing shame against the builder. The safest room isn't the quietest room where everyone just politely agrees. No way. The safest room is the one where truth can arrive early enough to actually be useful.
But it's not enough to just understand this architecture. You have to put it into practice. Welcome to Section 4, the 5-minute revolution, and your action plan.
You are going to fire that invisible manager of fear in your head, and you're going to replace it with a 300-second microbrain trust. That is exactly 5 minutes. The very next time you sit down to work, I'm talking before tomorrow, I am challenging you to take one unfinished, unpolished, wet concrete idea and put it directly in front of one trusted critic. And you're going to do it fast, before your ego has the time to build up all its formal defenses. When you show them this rough draft, you're going to execute these 3 exact steps. First, name the problem you're currently wrestling with. Literally point right to the bending steel. Second, ask one surgical question. Do not ask them, hey, is this good? Or do you like it? No, ask them, where is this unclear? Or where does this lose tension? Third, the moment they answer, you write the next cut. You do not defend yourself. Actually, scratch that. You don't even explain what you meant to do. You just accept that handprint in the wet concrete as your very first piece of vital design data, and you smooth it right into the next iteration. Because ultimately, this is the core truth you really must internalize. Candor is care before polish. I want the weighty reality of that to just sit with you for a second. Bringing someone into your unfinished mess isn't an imposition on them. It is an act of trust. And offering a surgical, non-possessive note is a profound act of care. The temporary, sometimes super uncomfortable scaffold of the brain trust is the only thing that allows the permanent steel frame of your creative courage to eventually rise.
So I'm going to leave you with this final provocative thought. Take a look at your desk, look at your calendar, look at your open files. What threat to clarity are you hiding from the room right now? What project are you over-polishing simply because you are terrified of the stress test? Continue this internal transformation. Stop projecting the work from reality. Because at the end of the day, great art isn't protected by hiding it from judgment. Great art is protected by completely changing what judgment is for.